My name is Abigail Fisher, and this is my project in True Colors. From a young age, I looked around and saw the world through storybooks and movies. I wanted to go see wizards, samurais, and Amazonian warriors, and the beautiful countries that they were from. As the years passed, these rose-colored lenses slowly faded, and the world became a battleground of colors. Throughout the media, there were so many stories of discourse between people around the world and here in the United States. From culture to different social and racial issues, many of these stem from a lack of understanding of different and healthy discussion about thoughts and opinions. This passion of cultivating understanding is then shown through both of the proposals that I gave for this project. My Bible verse for this project was Colossians 3:11. In Christ there is not Greek and Jew, circumcision and uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, slave, and free, but Christ is all and in all. I chose this verse because it embodies the fact that we are all together in Christ, and that even though we are different, we are the same. My original proposal was to help those in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria hit September 20th, 2017. Maria left the entire island without power for weeks and months, and many lost their homes and were living without roofs over their heads. The media coverage of the event for the first couple weeks was humongous, and it showed the extent of the damage along with the slow recovery rate to the island. The rate at which the island was recovering was very worrisome to me, and it prompted me to want to try to do something about it. I wanted to raise awareness through my project about Puerto Rico and the state it is in with the United States, along with the damage that was done and what needed to be helped. Then I also wanted to have the Spanish immersion trip to go there and help different communities affected. However, when I proposed this project on May 29th, Bob Grush was not present, and so we had another meeting at a later date to get the official bubbles. It was a month then before the bubble meeting on June 25th, and within that time I prayed and felt that God was leading me towards a project that involved even more of my passions. I knew that I wanted to have a project that reflected the importance of understanding and discussion, which is lacking in society now. As Christians, we are called to go to the nations, although it is not as easy as it seems. Evangelism isn't an immediate thing. A lot of times you need to build relationships which take time and understanding of both the person and where they come from. I also wanted to include learning about different ethnic groups' American history, besides the largely European history that we are taught in classes. I then still wanted to plan and have the Spanish immersion trip, and that would most likely take place in the Dominican Republic through good connections through Pure Freedom. On the 25th, I received these bubbles. For research, I had to watch 10 documentaries, do 10 interviews, watch 10 TED Talks, and then I also had to read an unidentified amount of books, although a book was written. I was then given cultural competencies bubbles, which included teaching or doing simulations or activities on different issues such as homosexuality, which includes Greg Coles, who I will talk about later, white privilege, which was later revised to just privilege in general, profiling, and cultural appropriation, which includes Rachel Dolezal, who I will also talk about later. Then I was given the task of planning the Spanish immersion trip. So that includes outreach activities here and while we are there, organized logistics, and then anything that comes along the way. Bubbles that were bonus were connect with urban ministries and interview views against Christianity that I did not complete. Then the egg bubble, which is just chilling in the corner of my egg sheet, is anything that you wanted to work on additionally. So something that was birthed from the project, like an egg. This is the first of 3 slides of my timeline. So through May to November, this includes May through November. Through these 2 months, I was able to accomplish a lot of my research. I watched 3 documentaries. I completed 6 of my 10 interviews. I taught 3 classes, acquired a mentor, and had Greg Coles come in and speak. And then throughout these months, I continued to ask about the Spanish immersion trip and continued to try and plan and schedule my PFL. Then through December to the beginning of February, I completed almost all my research except for 4 documentaries. I helped plan and executed the Lunar New Year's party as an egg bubble, and I met with my mentor twice. Finally, at the end of February and into March, I completed all my research, started and hosted 4 lunch missions, which I will explain later what that is. I led a PFL, which allowed me to complete all of my cultural competencies bubbles, and then I later held a meeting for interested students and their parents about the Dominican Republic. I spent approximately 307 hours on this project, which equates to 13 24-hour days, or in other words, 38 8-hour workdays. This is an estimation, although I didn't take into account whenever I watched documentaries twice, which happened a lot of times, and then also time spent on planning things. Then getting into my bubbles. For research, so we'll start off with my documentaries. As I was looking through my documentaries, I actually realized that I watched 11, meaning that I did a bonus documentary, and you can just pick which one you want that to be. For the first slide, I watched For the Bible Tells Me So, which was given by Bob, and it follows multiple families and their experiences with having homosexual children and dealing with society and the church's views on that. The Lunch Date, which was also given by Bob, which depicts a small narrative that illustrates racial profiling. The Rise and Fall of Jim Crow, that's pretty self-explanatory. This was a 3-episode series, although I only watched the first one in order to help me gain information for curriculum integration that I would do later on. The 13th, which talks about mass incarceration and its rate in the United States, primarily of African Americans. The Racial Divide, which documents the life of Rachel Dolezal, a Caucasian woman who identifies as African American. And the Gender Revolution, which depicts the evolving topic and idea of gender. I also watched Lord Save Me from Your Followers. This was given by Bob and tackles Christians in the United States and their views and the ways that they deal with the American society. I also watched The Terminal, which was also given by Bob, which is a movie that features Tom Hanks, who portrays a man who is stuck in a flight terminal and after his country falls into civil war. A Class Divided, which follows the story of a third-grade teacher who simulates discrimination in her class and therefore affects the lives of her children forever. Latino Americans, this involved watching the entire 6-episode series, 1 hour for each episode, which chronicles the history of Latino Americans in the United States. And then Becoming American, the Chinese Experience, which chronicles Chinese American history. For my interviews, I wanted to interview local pastors and then slowly get out of the area to see what the church's view in our area is of diversity. On September 26th, I interviewed Donald Crane, minister at Howard Christian Church, and then the following days I interviewed Christopher Passante, who is the pastor of United Methodist Church, who later became my mentor due to his enthusiasm and just real excitement over the topics that I was talking about. On the 3rd, I interviewed Zach McDonald, pastor of Access Church, and then Joshua Grimes, pastor of The Commonplace, which meets at a coffee shop in Lock Haven. I then interviewed Tim Yates, who is my personal pastor of Watermark Church, who was also a former missionary in Malawi and Australia. Debbie Federico, who is a reverend or pastor, she doesn't really prefer either one, missionary and a natural disaster relief responder. Jennifer Grundler, who is a campus minister and director of the Wesley Foundation at Penn State, and Pastor Mackenzie, pastor of the Unity Church of Jesus Christ in State College. And then finally, Leida Cuiros, pastor of Puerto de Conexión in State College, which is the first Spanish-speaking church in State College. Kay Russell, pastor of Servants Together in Pine Ridge Retreat Center, which works with the Lakota tribe in South Dakota. These are the TED Talks that I watched. For books, I read Single Gay Christian by Greg Coles, Many Colors, Cultural Intelligence for a Changing Church by Son Chen Ra, One in Christ by David D. Ireland, Ph.D., and A Practical Guide to Culture by John Stonestreet and Brett Kunkel. Now on to my cultural competencies bubbles, which includes a lot. So under the topic of homosexuality, I had Greg Coles come in and speak about his story and experiences on the 15th of October to the student body during a chapel. Along with talking about his experience, he also preached about the importance of giving up things in order to follow Jesus more wholeheartedly. For his whole life, Greg Coles' identity was masked by his own embarrassment and shame. It wasn't until he became his authentic self that he could fully focus his heart on God. We were tested, so after the trials, we can become what God truly intended us to be, men and women after his own heart. Molly Kenny, class of 2019. For curriculum integration, I taught 4 classes, including Jim Crow laws, mass incarceration, and other ways that discrimination of African Americans is still occurring by legal means. I taught 3 of Aaliyah's classes, the first on Jim Crow laws on September 21st, the second on the Scottsboro trial, which is similar to a trial described by Harper Lee in To Kill a Mockingbird, which they were reading at the time. And then I continued on to talk about mass incarceration and other topics leading up to the present. Then later in the year, on February 20th, I checked in and gave them a little pop quiz just to see how much they had retained from my teachings from the semester before. Then I taught one of Mrs. Moyer's classes, in which I taught about the Jim Crow laws on November 2nd. Abigail did a very good job in teaching us. She spoke clearly and provided an in-depth view on the topic. She gave historical figures and provided pictures to try to show us how horrifying it was. Ethan Costello, class of 2022. You did a very nice job at showing us how racial profiling affected people in the past and still affects people today. It was refreshing to see how real-life stories and examples, even though some were hard to listen to. You did an amazing job at starting awareness and showing us how our actions affect others, no matter if they are good or bad. Michaela Lay, class of 2022. And now we'll go into my prep for life. For my cultural competencies bubble, I had to complete 10 activities or simulations, or just teachings in general, of different racial and social issues. And so in order to complete that, I held a 3-hour PFL, or Prep for Life. This PFL was aimed at allowing the students to explore current racial and social issues in a controlled environment. During these 3 hours, students rotated through 8 stations that allowed them to evaluate their own racial assumptions and unconscious biases while filling out a packet with questions about each station. At Station 1, the students analyzed 4 different resumes to see who they would hire. The resumes included a Caucasian man, a woman, a Filipino, and a Korean man, each with a name that suited their gender and place of origin. This activity was used to represent unconscious bias in the work and hiring process. At Station 2, they took the Harvard Race Implicit Assumptions Test to see their unconscious bias while testing their knowledge on current gender vocabulary. At Station 3, the groups watched a video about Rachel Dolezal and about her racial identity. Through the video, the students got information on Rachel's upbringing, work, and ultimately her social downfall. Also, throughout the video, Rachel Dolezal expressed different views on her race and how she identifies. At Station 4, the students read and discussed 4 cases of alleged cultural appropriation. The articles included stories discussing hairstyles, clothes, and just the idea of wanting to be another race. Station 5, the students I wanted them to watch 3 different music videos, such as Vava, a Chinese rapper, BTS, a Korean boy group who is world-renowned, along with Cheyenne, a Puerto Rican music artist, to hear different languages and see different cultures through the videos. At Station 4, they looked internally and evaluated their own lives and whether they individually had multiracial relationships through personal quizzes. They completed a chart of people that they would invite to their future wedding, according to race, in order to see how diverse their individual lives are. Then they also completed a cultural awareness test that I will later explain in detail. At Station 7, the students read and discussed 4 cases of racial profiling. That doesn't mean that they were stories of police incidences, but rather situations that are more mundane in nature. At Station 8, the groups watched a video about Caucasian men, mostly American, entering K-pop, or the Korean pop music industry, and discussed whether they were culturally appropriating or just trying to assimilate into the culture. Following the stations, the student body all gathered together and participated in the privilege walk. This activity was aimed at prompting the students to evaluate their own privilege through the narratives that they were given by the color cards that I gave them. Then afterwards, we formed a circle and discussed the issues that were presented at each station, along with their reactions. Although most groups were not able to make it to every single station, a lot of the students expressed interest and had very good ideas about each issue presented. Abigail's PFL was very good. It introduced a small Christian school to many different cultural and worldly views. I really liked it because it discussed important matters we rarely discuss as a school that I think we need to talk about, such as feminism and social prejudice. Jenny Sue Kenny, class of 2021. I then had 3 egg bubbles that all involved aspects of the cultural competencies bubble. In collaboration with Abigael and her senior project on identity, we created a test that the students took during my PFL that evaluated what kind of culture they grew up in. I wanted the students to understand that even though most of us grew up in the United States, we each have a different home culture that influences the way that we interact with the world around us. For example, this involved seeing whether they were individually or group-minded, naturally a leader or a follower, and that included many different subjects. Every year we have a Lunar New Year's party at Grace Prep. So this year I felt that I could fit into my project as a way for the students to understand a different culture. So on February 5th, the international students represented their countries by each cooking a dish for the student body for the first day of Lunar New Year's. This was a great opportunity for the students to learn of the different foods and also additional holiday traditions through a Kahoot that we played that I created. The student in first place then received a $20 gift card to Little Szechuan's, the most authentic Chinese food restaurant in State College, in my opinion. It was super fun cooking for all the students, and I'm really glad that they enjoyed the meal. I'm happy I got to share part of my culture with the school. Jacqueline Hugh, class of 2020. Abigail showed exceptional initiative in approaching me with her proposal for our annual Lunar New Year celebration. Over the course of several weeks, she managed a team of students and adults in planning a delicious multi-ethnic meal and festivities for 70-plus individuals. Her careful oversight resulted in a well-planned event for minimal expense. I was impressed by Abigail's conscientiousness and organizational skills. Shauna McElroy. I then hosted 4 lunch missions. Lunch missions allowed for the students to listen to different missionaries about their times abroad, along with the tips that they had. Tim Yates, pastor of Watermark Church, who is my pastor and who I had interviewed, came in and talked to the students about his 5 years in Malawi and 15 years in Australia. Then Matt Wilmus, who works with the campus ministry, spoke on his time in various countries and gave 4 helpful tips for international travel, such as being humble, knowing the difference between culture and stereotype, trying everything, language and food on first meeting, and showing grace to yourself and others around you. Kirk and Julie Zutcher came in and talked about their time working in China for a couple of weeks and with college students through China Outreach Ministries. Then finally, Don Jones, the history teacher for Grace Prep, spoke on his many years being a missionary in Germany and how having a family helped him further his reach throughout the community. And because of the short lunch period, he might have a part 2. I really enjoyed the lunchtime presentations by different missionaries. It helped me learn about different cultures, and it was cool to hear the tips that they gave. It made me realize how different cultures do things differently, but how that can be a good thing. Rebecca Barker, class of 2022. So from the very beginning of my time at Grace Prep, I wanted to go on a Spanish immersion trip. Unfortunately, that had not occurred again since my freshman year, and so I wanted to help with that. From November to the present, I have been in contact with Marlene Luna, a contact through Pure Freedom, and have been planning the upcoming Spanish immersion trip scheduled for June 18th to 25th. In preparation for this trip, I traveled to the Dominican Republic over spring break by myself to familiarize myself with the town and what we'd be doing there. Then, on March 18th, with interested students and parents. There are currently, whenever I wrote this, there were currently 5, and then 1 interested, but now we have 6 confirmed students, including myself. So we'll start with the meeting. On March 18th, I met with interested students and their parents to give them more information about the Dominican Republic trip that their students wanted to go on. And through this, I was able to give them more information from the trip that I had taken recently on the spring break. Through the generosity of Bob Gresh, I was able to go to the Dominican Republic during spring break to formulate an accurate plan for the upcoming Spanish immersion trip. While there, I visited several communities and got to know the people that would be aiding us and who we would be helping while we were there. The Dominican Republic is a beautiful place with kind people, awesome weather, although you can feel the spiritual weight whenever you're there. Our work with the kids is very important because they need to learn about Jesus and the respect that they should have for others from a young age. Through working with the girls, through skits, and through soccer, we'll be giving them these soccer balls, which have the gospel message in Spanish. So we have 5 of those soccer balls that we'll be giving them. And also through skits, we'll be giving them examples of how young girls should act and value their bodies in order to prevent them from selling them in the future. Also, society in Jarabacoa is one without fathers. The role of a father is either non-existent or severely destroyed by men unknowing how to treat women and therefore their kids. This is why Irving, Marlene's husband's work with helping the local guys play baseball is impactful, because he's teaching them respect and hard work. By far, my biggest learning stretch throughout this project has been confidence. Confidence with my beliefs and confidence in myself overall. From speaking to pastors and students to traveling to the Dominican Republic by myself, I have learned to have confidence in myself and in the guidance of the Lord. God has blessed me so much through and with this project, and I want to be able to confidently explain and exclaim the work that He has done. Though this project has pushed me in many ways, I'm very glad for all that it has taught me. From connecting to professional people to traveling and therefore planning a trip for others. I've learned so much through this experience. Overall, by completing all the bubbles that I had seen, I can now look back and see all the hard work that I've done, and therefore what God has poured into me. I have spent so many hours on this project, and I cannot be more proud of the impact and change that my project has made and will make. Through learning about different social and racial issues, I pray that the battleground of colors has become more organized. I want to say thank you to I want to say thank you to you, Bob, for founding this school and having seniors complete such sometimes dreaded but complex projects that push me to so much and help my passions grow intelligently. I also want to thank you, Ernie, for putting up with all my questions and updates almost every day. Then my family for helping me build my crazy ideas and dreams into reality, and especially my mom for all the editing help and encouragement along the way. And finally, thank you guys for being so accepting to my ideas and all the events that I held throughout the year, even if I had to drag you to some. Thank you.
So that was really, really impressive. I am really proud of you and everything that you have done. And even that I know your advice or anything, I really get really informed about what you were doing and your project. All those projects that everybody did, they have been so amazing, but yours is more personal connected with me. To me, it's this is my everyday life, trying to develop cultural intelligence and modify my way of thinking. And for the fact that just my family is intercultural just every day, it makes me try to find out what was in your head, what you wanted to know about all this amazing world, which is many cultures, many languages, many way of thinking. But, and so I am so impressed and proud of you. And I know that you want to learn Spanish, and I know that you want to go and do God's work in other places. And I hope that I can see that one day or hear from you and all the great things that you probably going to accomplish because of your passion. So I have 3 questions. They're kind of long questions, big questions. But first, before I start my questions, I want you to define to everybody, I don't know if that was clear, but about cultural intelligence, how you will define that.
Cultural intelligence is comprehending what your culture is and what you grow up listening to and thinking, and then understanding somebody else's motivations and the culture that they grew up in, which then aids and helps them maybe compute the world around both of you guys differently. So even though you might have the same situation, they might go at it a different way than you do. And so cultural intelligence is also about being culturally humble. So knowing that your culture isn't the best and your culture isn't the best way of doing things. And so with that, then you should then try to get to know whatever culture that they're from and how they are going at different questions and answers or situations that you guys are both dealing with.
Okay, so we are in a school where like one of the teachers is from another culture, but we have international students as well, and it's like you guys need to, trying to find out all those things. But so after doing this project, has it changed the way you see the world and how you interact with people? That's the first part of my first question. So I'm going to let you answer that part.
So this has definitely opened me up to different thinkings. I mean, from a really young age, I think that I've like just soaked in other cultures, and just my love for different languages and watching different TV shows. I just soak in a lot of stuff. So I think for a really long time, I didn't accept being American, if that makes sense, just because there's so many negative things that come along with being American. And for a really long time, I was like, oh, if I could have been born in some other country. And I think through traveling to China for a month and then also the Dominican Republic, it's made me become proud of who I am and what I grew up in, but then also I go about different situations a little bit differently than others, just from the different cultures that I've soaked up through different means.
I do know that feeling about trying to be from another culture. I do know that. But so, in the same question is like, so were things that you used to do before that after this experience with your project, you no longer do or you no longer want to do?
Yeah, so I used to be really timid about touching anything that was controversial because I didn't want to be labeled as, oh, you're just a white girl. Like, you have no input. Like, you don't have a stand that you can stand on to then talk about this because you're privileged and you like have no say in this. And I think after this project and in my learning stretch, I talked about it, but I've definitely become more confident in what I say. And more so, I have just realized that I do have different opinions than others, and that I have to formulate my ideas and thoughts in a way that is respectful to both of us. So.
Okay. So my second question still is in two parts. So how can Grace Prep better apply cultural intelligence?
Well, I think at Grace Prep, we do a very good job of understanding culture and different things, although I would say that stereotypes shouldn't be joked around as much, because I do know that we joke around with, oh, you're just Chinese or whatever, of course you're good at math, and different things like that. And I think, obviously, it's true for a lot of the international students, but that's also because of the teaching curriculum in other countries that are just more advanced, do things earlier than we do. And also I would just say to definitely involve international students more. So like if you have a group of students and you know that you have an international student also in your grade, to like also invite them, even though it might be a little awkward, because even though it might take time, after a while they could become your really good friend if you were to pour into them as you do other friends.
So in my second part is like, in what aspects of Grace Prep's academic culture need to change in order to be like a school that works better with people from other cultures, like here in this setting in the school, but as well mission trips, because this school does mission trips. And how do you think your project had helped to those things?
Well, through my PFL and learning about different social and racial issues, and also the cultural awareness test that I had them complete, you are aware of the things that impact people around you, and also then you learn about what your own culture is. And I think that's important because a lot of other countries are more group-oriented and more so than maybe Americans are. And so I think for mission trips wise, you need to understand what your culture is and where you're coming from, and then also try your best to understand the history or just a little bit about the country that you're traveling to. And also here at Grace Prep, I would just say that it's more of just accepting everyone for whoever they are and not just immediately looking at the exterior and saying, oh, we're different, like this isn't gonna work. And I think it's just more of just an openness of your mind also.
I love the fact that you include in your lunchtime period people who has experience in mission stuff, because since this school does mission trips, I think we should give more training to the students and prepare them a little bit to that setting they're going to go. And I think that's amazing that you did. So this is my last question. How this project will transcend in your personal and professional life after this?
Yeah, so I'm going to college for Spanish education and minoring in a TESOL so I can teach English as a second language. And so a lot of the research and different things have prepared me and will prepare me further, like through doing the Spanish immersion trip in June. It'll prepare me for, first off, just living in a different country that speaks a different language than I do, and also the target language that I want to speak. And so also just leading a group will help me work with different students. And through this project, I taught different classes, and I realized that I knew that I wanted to be a teacher. But through teaching, I realized that I really like it, and that it's really something that I do want to do. And so with working with the children and playing with the children while I was there in the Dominican Republic, I also just realized just how much I really wanted to go out there and do something. So, yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much, and thank you for this experience about cultural intelligence and all these different, society and sexual preferences, all the things that you try to avoid and to talk about that are really hard to talk. So thank you for that, and it was a really big experience for me to be as a teacher, but to participate in some of your activities and how amazing you were doing and organizing this. You have an amazing organization skills, and I am really proud of you to see this young girl who has these skills, but what makes me more proud to know a person like you is how passionate you are, and then you work so hard to accomplish your passion. So good job. I am really proud of you.
Thank you.
All right, Abigail, that was really great. Great job on the presentation. I really like your project a lot. I think that your project, it involves a lot of high-level thinking and research, and it brings your heart of compassion that I believe you have, that you really want to make things better. So it was a really unique project, and I think you did a great job with it. I think it would have been pretty easy because it was a hard topic to not do a great job with it, but you did pull it off, and I thought it was really, really well done. I always say this, but it is true, I enjoy reading the binders and the research, and the extensive research that you did, the documentaries on Latino Americans, and all of the things that you put into the binder, it really made me feel like you could teach a class or write a curriculum on it. That's how extensive it was. And that was, I think, really due to you bringing in those things that you're passionate about. So I really give you a lot of credit for that. Your interviews, you got done really early, and most of them, I think, and you had some good ones there. I wondered, how did you get to interview somebody from the Pine Ridge Retreat Center with the Lakota Sioux? I was interested in that because that was something we do talk about a bit in one of my English classes, and I thought, that's interesting.
Yeah, so my mentor, Christopher Pasante, who is also somebody else that I interviewed, he gave me that contact, along with another man who works in Washington, D.C., which I haven't been able to contact yet, but I think would be interesting to talk to him too. But yeah, he had worked with her before, and he thought that it would be an interesting interview to do, and so then he gave me her contact.
Okay. I mean, that just shows how thorough you are about the cultural differences in the United States when you're even talking about Native Americans, and that's not something that you normally would be exposed to here in central Pennsylvania. So that was really good. Your prep for life was very well organized, and it involved a lot of critical thinking, I think, for the students. So that was very good. I'm really happy for you that you're going to get to complete the immersion trip that you've been wanting to do. So I'm really happy for you that that has come together. I guess I just want to say good job, and yeah, I don't want to belabor the point too much, but yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks, Abigail.
Hey, Abigail. I've had a great time being your advisor, meeting often to talk about things, and then sometimes impromptu meetings in the cafeteria or whatever to answer questions. Your timeline was solid. I mean, just you worked consistently all year, and great job on that. So many of these categories were kind of easy to rate. It was multifaceted. You had so many different avenues with which you approached the idea of cultural intelligence, whether it be gender, race, ethnic culture, whatever, and you did a great job, I think, exposing our culture here to many different facets of culture, both here and abroad, things that we maybe never would have thought about. I learned what K-pop is. I never would have heard that before. As I get older, well, I guess let me speak to this real quick, just one small critique to hold my legacy. All of your writing was readable. Just a few of the pictures were a little dark. So just to keep my legacy going of, negligent critiques that probably have to do with my eyesight going bad or whatever, but one small critique when you're going to present, just make sure your pictures are clear, but shovel that away. I would encourage you, I was impressed, as I talked with her mom and dad, super impressed with your worldview, and specifically your Christian worldview. However, your ability to hear and decipher and discern and look at other worldviews and be willing to take a risk to try and educate other people about that. Hang on to that and continue to pursue that. And as you gain confidence in that, about what you know, stay humble. And I think it will take you in ways and places that you never even dreamed of in terms of being able to lead people and being someone that people are willing to follow when you have and are willing to decipher information, expose people information, but do it in a way that's humble. So just one question, because Katya took all mine. Have you felt, just kidding, have you felt through all of this exposure to all these different areas and different cultures and different perspectives on cultural intelligence, as you went through it, have you felt any pull in one particular direction? I know you love Spanish and those kind of things, but I just wondered if you had any thoughts, or as you grew through the project, if you felt a pull in any one way to missions or something like that.
Yeah, well, definitely I felt pulled towards Spanish-speaking countries, but also what I found that I was also pulled towards, which I've known for many years, is through watching Becoming American, the Chinese experience. I found it really interesting just how they were treated here in the United States, and the extreme racism that they went through up until the present, which now they're like a model minority, and that didn't come without a lot of costs. And I have definitely, before I got super into Spanish, I really wanted to go to China, because I was exposed to a lot of Chinese culture through Jen, who's lived with us for almost 4 years, and now Cindy, who lives in Taiwan and China both. And so I definitely, watching that, it renewed my passion that I had for that I had kind of fallen to the wayside, because for an extent, and still kind of now, although I haven't had a lot of time due to the project, but I'm really interested in the Chinese language. But recently I've also been getting really interested in Korean, and so a lot of different things have pulled me different ways, but definitely that was one that didn't shock me, but kind of made me realize, oh yeah, that's like still there, that I'm still like passionate about.
Abigail, great job up there. Excuse me. I like the timeline slide. I like the way you did that. It was very unique. It took us through that timeline. We saw the little components of what was there. It's an easy way to show all that you've done. And that was impressive. You're a great presenter. And I think you answered questions really well on the fly. So that's really good. Throughout the project, you had really excellent communication about the objectives and keeping in touch with us and doing things like that. Your professional contacts were awesome. But they were really good. One of the things I noticed is that you could have done this project in half the time if you just wanted to do the project in half the time. Mm-hmm. And you didn't. You went full scale ahead on, there wasn't much detail to what my bubbles were, and you could have done those in a very simplified fashion and said, I did my bubbles. But you went way above and beyond that. I thank you for that. You wouldn't have had to do that, but it made your project great. Tell me a little bit more about the spring break trip.
Yeah, so I flew there on the 2nd, and all by myself. Like my dad had stayed with me at the gate because he had a gate pass, so he just kind of stayed with me up until I flew. And actually, before traveling by myself, I had a real anxiety about customs. No matter what country, even coming back to the United States, I was always nervous about that, even though it's not even a big thing. But whenever I felt God throughout the whole trip, because as soon as I got on the plane to Santiago, I was sitting next to 2 older women, and the whole plane was just filled with Dominicans because it's not a very touristy place to go to in the country. And so I was like, oh goodness, I don't even know, all these people are going to be speaking Spanish, and there's not going to be really anyone who speaks English on this plane. And then I sat down, and the 2 ladies next to me one was born in the Dominican Republic, and the other was a friend that she was bringing along to the Dominican Republic, and they were super nice. And they obviously both spoke English, but they were like, oh, you can just stay with us, and we'll take you through customs and different things, so that alleviated the stress that I had about customs. And then while I was there, I would wake up at 9 every day, and then me and Marlene would go to different communities around the area. There were 2 that I think there are 10 communities that we're going to be hitting while we're there in June. And so I visited around 8, because 2 of them were an hour or 45 minutes away. And so we visited a lot of schools that we'll be working with. And Harbacoa gets a lot of missions trips, missions teams there. And so I saw it wasn't fully all Dominican, because obviously there were Americans just walking around in different restaurants. But so while we were there, different missions teams were helping there. And so we went to different schools, and they were working there. And so we were just kind of gauging what we would be doing while we were there. So it might not be so much of labor-intensive missions trip or Spanish immersion trip, because so many teams are already there and helping. And so whenever we're there, we'll most likely just be helping just play with the kids, give them just role models. And also we'll be doing different skits during evangelism dedicated times. And so the trip overall it stretched me, but in a way that I really wanted it to. And even though I didn't speak entirely in Spanish there, Marlene, she was yeah, you can flip between whatever language you would like, and if you don't know a word, then just say it. And so it was really healing and helpful, because while I was there, I knew I was working on my senior project, but it was more of a fun aspect of my project. So I didn't have to be oh my gosh, this is I need to be working on something else, because this was a big part of my project that I had to complete.
Great. Katya asked some really good questions. The whole panel did, so I have a little bit less. Here's a curveball. You ready?
Sure.
Where do you draw the line between practical living and avoiding offending others?
Could you re-say that? Sorry.
Where do you draw the line between practical living? Like, you have to live your life. And people can be offended by anything, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want to say, you look beautiful up there, you're well dressed. And I thought, well, somebody could say, well, how dare you call her beautiful? That's totally sexist. And I want to say, bug off. You know, that's what I would, like, that's what I, so at what point do you think we talked early on about the girl that wore the kimono, or it's not called kimono.
Yeah, the teepaw.
Yes,
Yeah.
to prom, and how,
Yeah.
should she not do that?
No, I talked to my sisters about this because I didn't know if there was some unknown tragic history behind the dress. But like Jen and Cindy, they both didn't find a problem with it. I don't think that there was a problem with her wearing it. I think if it were more, I think between general living and then just making yourself like aware of other people's opinions or anything like that, I think it's more of the intention that you're saying it with. And I think a lot of times that's where a lot of, like, obviously if you put it on social media, anyone's going to take it and spin it in whatever they want. But with just your conversations, like in person, if you say something with a rude or disrespectful intent, that's where it then becomes disruptive. But if you were to just say it, and then if they were to be like, I was a little uncomfortable with that, then you can go on to explain maybe where you were coming at it from, and that you, like, if somebody does have a problem with whatever you say, then you can then go on and explain, like, that's not what I meant. It was more of me coming at it from this, and then they can also give you advice on how to maybe change the wording of whatever you said.
Do you feel more constrained the more you know that you're afraid you're going to offend people?
I actually felt more liberated
Okay.
the more that I knew, because at least me personally, through all the research and traveling that I've done, I, like, in my conclusion, I talked about growing intelligently about my passions, because beforehand I felt constrained because I didn't know what was right or wrong. And I think through this project, I was able to understand from both point of views what is right and wrong to say. So it became more clear to me. So it wasn't as if it was this fog where I was like, hopefully this isn't too bad, because the fog kind of cleared through all of my research and things that I had done, that now I knew that I could say this. And if it did come off in the wrong way, then I knew what I was saying, and that maybe it's that person who maybe has a sore spot somewhere, and that's where that's coming from.
All right. Where'd the mission ball come from?
So the mission ball came from Meadowbrook Christian High School. So we, for years that I've been here, we always play Meadowbrook, and they always bring out the mission ball, which is a style of evangelism that their school does and that they've been working through. And so I had seen it for 4 years, and I knew that a lot of the girls in the Dominican Republic, like whenever I was there, they would go immediately from school and play for hours, and they would go and win tournaments and different things like that. And so, and also there's like, while we were there, she showed us like baseball evangelism type things, and I remembered that I'd seen these soccer balls for so many years, and I knew that they could put them in different languages. And so my dad contacted them, and he asked for 5, and in Spanish, so now we're going to be taking those with us.
Oh, great. The PFL looked great. This is another project that did a lot of work that I wanted to get done, and we just didn't get done. And I love the things you took people through. And just talking to Ernie here about how can we keep this in the curriculum. And, you know, I know we do some of this stuff, but, you know, if there's some more stuff that we can take out of this, I think it would be great. Yeah, I think you did a great job, Abigail. I think it's a terrific project, lots of work. It was very comprehensive, multifaceted, and you killed it. So thank you for hard work.
Thank you. Huh? Thank you.
All right, so we give you a chance to say something. It's our new tradition after last year. So if you want to say something about the project.
Well, I'm extremely proud of what Abigail has done in the project. She's spent an awful lot of time working on this, and it is a passion of hers and has been for some time. And must be my glasses. And you know, the only reason we're here today is because, as an 8th grader, Abigail, we went to Winter Jam, and Abigail said, I think I'd like to go to a Christian high school. And this is how we landed here. And I'm so thankful because now it has exposed her to all these other cultures and reinforced her faith in Jesus. So I think it's been a great project, and she's done a good job. But her mom spent an awful lot more time on this than I did, so I'll turn it over to her.
Well, Abby, you rocked. You did a great job with that. It's just been... It's been amazing working alongside her over these last few months. You know, she started, as soon as the 11th grade year was over, she started full force, and I couldn't be more proud of the hard work and dedication that she put into it. It's just amazing. So you did a good job.
Well, we're really proud of you, so keep up the good work. All right, let's give Abby another round of applause.